I'm particularly excited that folks came out today because, well, it's our first day of school in Virginia Beach. And so for those of you who dropped off kids this morning, everybody, look at that. Now we're talking. Of course, I think school started in Norfolk this morning, and we start in Chesapeake next week. Just thanks everybody for all that you're about to do in supporting our kids as they head into what is an incredibly important part of their life, school. And that's one of the things I'm hoping that we will spend most of our time on this morning. We're here at the Bow Creek Recreation Center, so thanks to all the folks at Bow Creek for hosting us today. And as I said, this is our fifth Parents Matter discussion. We've done them in, Roanoke and Prince William County and Henrico, in Stafford, and now here in Virginia Beach. And so thank you all. It's been a great discussion across the Commonwealth with lots of parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, neighbors who have engaged in this really important topic for us. So many of you may not know, Suzanne and I have 4 kids. And we, in fact, have loved being parents. But being a parent requires, first, a fair amount of grit, as we know. Second of all, we love being called the meanest parents on the planet. How many people have been called the meanest parents on the planet? It's actually a badge of honor. We should all feel really good about that. But second of all, I think what comes with being a parent is the responsibility of being a parent as well. And as part of our discussion today, I'm hoping that we can pull in that aspect of parents mattering. Parents have a fundamental right in Virginia to make decisions for their children, for their well-being, for their care, for their education. But what comes with that is parents' responsibilities to be engaged in their children's lives as well. And that will be, I think, a meaningful part of what we're going to discuss. We would not be here if it wasn't for the great partnerships that exist across Virginia Beach and Chesapeake and Norfolk and the rest of the Commonwealth. And so we've got great friends from our General Assembly here, some folks are already in our General Assembly, some of which will be in our General Assembly. And so let me just go through. Of course, everybody knows Delegate Karen Greenhall. So we'll say hello. Delegate and Chairman Barry Knight is over here. Nice to see you, sir. Senator John Cosgrove is here. Thank you, sir. And folks running, Christy Newcraig, who's running in Senate District 19. Kevin Adams, who's running in Senate District 22. And Mike Parsik, who's running for the House of Delegates in District 96. I also want to thank the many members who were elected locally here. And so, first of all, school board members. School board members, I think there's a bunch from Virginia Beach. I see friends here. If you would just stand up, and we'll just say thank you to all of you that are here. Thank you. Thank you. And we've got lots of folks here from city councils, and anybody from Virginia Beach City Council, stand up. There you go. Thank you. And I just want to stop just for a second and thank somebody especially who's here, and that is Sheriff Ken Stolley for all the amazing work that he does. Thank you. Sheriff Stolley has announced that later this year he will retire. He has been in this tremendous role of keeping us safe since 2010, and before that served in so many different ways. And so I want to thank you, sir, for loving the Commonwealth of Virginia and loving Virginia Beach. It means the world to us. So thank you. I also want to stop and thank military families. Military families that are here, thank you, because sometimes you're here for a long time, and sometimes you're here for a short time. We love having you here. We understand that when you move, you come to new communities and you make us better. And so thank you, because we recognize that when someone in the family serves, the entire family serves. And so thank you for your service, thank you for loving our country, and thank you for being here in Virginia Beach. Just reflecting on Sheriff Stolley's service, safety in our schools and safety in our communities is just one place I just want to make a pit stop for a minute. We are really seeing a major challenge across the Commonwealth and across the country, and that is the drug crisis that we're seeing. It manifests itself in so many ways, in crime, in gang activity, and particularly in fentanyl poisonings. And I wanted to just highlight the fact that this is not something that stops and asks whether someone is a Republican or a Democrat, or whether they're urban or rural, or whether they are white or black. This is an absolute scourge in our community. And at the end of the day, we're losing on average 5 Virginians every single day to fentanyl overdoses. Please talk to your families. Talk to your children. Attorney General and my wife launched a program called One Pill Can Kill, and it can. We did a very important public moment in Stafford High School with Secretary Gadara, who is here, our Secretary of Education. So thank you for being here. And what we heard back from so many of the high school students was they didn't know. They didn't know that Percocet that they borrowed from a friend because they had a sore knee after a sporting event could kill them because it's being laced with fentanyl. They didn't know that the packet that they drop into their vape, which I talked to them about not doing that, is laced with fentanyl and can kill them. This is what we're dealing with. And so, if nothing else today, we're going to have a great discussion, but I just want to leave with all of you a real request, if not a requirement. Talk to your families. And please make sure everybody understands one pill can kill. This is it. So, let's... we're going to cover a number of topics today. And those topics are going to start with the conversation between Delegate Greenwald and me. But we're going to open up for questions and comments and thoughts from you. See, the reason why this is so important is it gives us a chance to hear from you. And I'm sure there'll be moments where people want to get an opinion about something, but I will spend time with my head down writing. That's because I want to not forget things. And tonight, I'll have a chance to reflect on this conversation, and there will be things that came out of this conversation that will impact administrative decisions and legislative priorities. And so that's how this discussion hopefully will go today. We're going to cover a bunch of topics. And let me just start with one, which is the model policies that we released back in July. And these model policies were written to ensure the dignity, the privacy, the respect of every child and every parent in our schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's why they were written. At the heart of the model policies is the role of parents. It's a parent matters moment, not a political moment. The role of parents in children's lives and the fundamental right that is inscribed in code, but also we know is right, that every parent has that fundamental right to make decisions with regard to their child's upbringing, their care, and their education. And therefore, all decisions with children go back to parents, even those most difficult ones. When a child might be questioning their identity in school, a parent has to be at the head of the table, and certainly can never be excluded from the table unless there's a fundamental belief that there's abuse. Good friends, this is what the model policies are all about. The Attorney General last week made it very, very clear that the model policies not only are fully consistent with all laws, but that school boards have to adopt them. They have to adopt them consistent, in a form consistent with what we do. And so just to be clear,
The only decision that school boards have to make is to either adopt the model policies as written or policies consistent with them, which are the words in code. This is something that I think has been debated a bit. The Attorney General very clearly opined last week that's the responsibility of our school boards. I'd also like for us today to cover issues regarding expectations of excellence in school. You see, over the course of the last number of years, expectations for what it means to be proficient were watered down. What do I mean by that? Decisions were made along the way in previous administrations that in order to be deemed proficient, it required fewer correct answers on the test. That means that children were told they were proficient, and yet they had only gotten so many questions right this year versus last year, and the year before, and the year before. What was created out of that was something that I and the secretary call an honesty gap. So parents were being told that their children were proficient based on state testing. But when you compare it to national testing, our children were falling further and further behind. And the gap between those two lines is an honesty gap. We saw the manifestation of this systematic decline in expectations really take home following the pandemic, when schools were closed unnecessarily for extended periods of time. And Virginia's kids suffered mightily. Mightily. In fact, when compared to other states, Virginia had the largest learning loss in the nation. The largest in the nation. In fact, our fourth graders ranked either top or bottom of the heap when you look at this in math and reading and learning loss. So I want us to talk about how you all are seeing work being done to, one, reestablish expectations of excellence, but also work that is being done to close this gap. Of course, what happened as a result of being told that staying at home and watching a 12-inch screen was a quality education is our children also got used to being alone. And it was being alone where a lot of the mental health and behavioral health challenges began. And so I want us to spend some time talking about that. Virginia in 2019 was ranked near the bottom in the nation in mental health support for our youth. And during the pandemic, it didn't get any better. And you couple that with the pervasiveness of social media in all of our children's lives, and all of a sudden you begin to see a real connection. And so I want to challenge this discussion to speak frankly about how parents are equipped to be engaged in their children's lives with regards to social media. To be clear, we in fact put in a bill amendment this past legislative session to amend the bills and to include language that would make it illegal for social media companies to sign up minors to an account without parental approval, because parents matter. And on top of that, to forbid them from packaging and selling the data of minors, like where they are, what they do. The reality is that, in this case, Senate Democrats blocked that bill. And they chose to support social media companies over families. And then finally, we're going to include a discussion around multiple pathways in schools. And the fact is that the idea that one size fits all really is one size fits none. Because every child is different, and every family needs to engage in a discussion about the path for education that best fits that child's God-given capabilities and future. So that's where we're going to go. And I will be asking a few questions, and we've got some folks that are mic wranglers here But I would like to start with Delegate Greenlaw. So I know that parents matter to you because you're not only a parent, you're a grandparent. And just share with us a little bit about your own heart on this topic.
Sure. So yes, I am. I'm a parent of two, grandparent of two. And with my children, I realized early that I was responsible for my own children and that included their education. Which is why with my kids, we did public school, private school, and homeschool. I chose what was best for my child, and my two children were different. Our children learn differently, so what was best for each child at a given time for my family and what we can manage to do. And so empowering parents is something that I'm so honored to work with the governor, that we work to empower parents so that they have choices to be able to make decisions and then make sure that they have the power to make the decisions for their family. And some of the things that we've done already, we got off to a good start. We got rid of the mask mandate and put that decision back to the parents of the law. And then we also gave parents the right to review and approve the curriculum that's being used with their child in their schools. And then a third thing that we did that I'm really pleased about is that if there is an incident of bullying in our schools, parents have to be informed within 24 hours. Parents need that information so they can protect their children. And we all know in this room, I hope we all understand, children belong to the parents, not to the state. But the state is responsible for those children while they're in our schools, which is why, as a new delegate, I was really honored to get to carry the governor's first school safety bill last year. And through that bill, we strengthened the working relationship between every school in the state and their local law enforcement, which was a great achievement. And then this year, I got to carry his second school safety bill, and that we have money allotted for SROs. So, but that bill allowed that money to also be used for other security issues and funding for training and safety equipment. So, it's so good to be able to say that in Virginia, we are working to keep every school safe in Virginia, and we're also working to support our parents instead of trying to take their place.
All right, so let's start with expectations for kids. And what we do know is that children will meet the expectations that are set with them. And if expectations are watered down, sadly, they'll meet those lower expectations. And we also know when expectations are increased or stretched, children will stretch. And this is our chance, I think, to one, hear from you all as I think we can pursue a real objective, to raise the ceiling and the floor, to bring to our kids collectively the opportunity to run as fast as they can, but also to help those children that we know need some extra support. The Virginia Literacy Act was passed last year on a bipartisan basis. It started out in K through 3rd grade, so that every child in Virginia can read. How about that for an objective? That every child in the Commonwealth of Virginia learns to read. And I know work has gone on since then with both bills and some funding that will extend that effort all the way up into middle school. This is a foundation of success, is being able to read. But let me stop. Okay, so what I'd love to do is hear from some folks on your own experiences, things that work, things that you think we should really consider in the realm of stretching our children and providing our children expectations to go meet their full potential, not one that we arbitrarily set for them. So are we starting over here? Okay, great. Wonderful.
Hello. Thank you. I'm Alexis Ruiz. I'm a mom of 3 kids, 2 in public schools. want to speak to the positive aspects that we're doing in District 2 primarily, just because that's what I'm familiar with. And I have to highlight them because I think the AVID program has served very well at I think post-COVID. The Chromebook usage, the amount of time that kids were spending on their computer had increased drastically too much. My kid didn't know simple words on how to spell, and I thought that was going to be a detriment to her future. So once I heard of the AVID program, which teaches kids to put pen to paper, pencil to paper, teach them to get off the computer for a little bit. You know, I understand that the jobs of the future are going to look different. We have to embrace technology. However, they have to learn the basics first. So one of the areas that one of the middle schools did last year, understanding the decrease in academic performance, you know, since COVID, they went ahead proactively and implemented a 3-ring binder to be issued to every single student. Okay, they had to have dividers, right? Kind of implementing this AVID readiness and organizational skills, teaching them how to just be readily prepared to address academic studies, and that's, I could see a drastic difference in my child, my 8th grader, and yeah, so that's probably one of the things I wanted to highlight the most.
Thank you. Just a quick comment, which is, I think as we move forward, and I think they're going to get discussed this week, and I'll just throw math standards into the midst of this, and the secretary hasn't thrown her shoe at me yet to say I'm allowed to say this. But this idea of learning the basics is so important. So important. And if we don't get the basics, we'll never get there. I'm a huge fan of technology when it's ready and when it's ready for a child, and then it's used the right way. But if a child doesn't actually learn how to spell because spell corrects them every time, or in math, if a child doesn't learn basic addition and subtraction and multiplication and division, then they'll never be able to fully understand the technology. And so this is a foundational principle of our administration, which is we must get the basics right. And so thank you for that comment. Okay, I'm just waving at somebody back here. Yes?
Hi, my name is Beth Braden. I'm actually a former retired school teacher here at Virginia Beach in elementary school. So this topic is close to my heart. I often worked with students who are struggling in achieving, and I also have, I'm a parent and a grandparent, and I've actually been tutoring my own grandchildren this summer in the basics because they had some gaps in their learning. So it is so important. I think we as parents are privileged to work alongside a governor like you that shows that parents matter, that is taking initiatives and trying to create new programs and resources for families. But it's our responsibility as parents to take advantage of those, whether it's taking time to tutor your own children in the topics that you are able to do that with, or you may have to hire outside tutors. There are so many great resources online, and I love what you all said, because it's not just about putting your child in front of a computer and having them do that by themselves, but it's about being there with them and choosing a program that is interactive and that applies to where they are in their own learning. So there's some great opportunities to help students fill in those achievement gaps, and I'm confident that as parents continue to stay involved and work the resources that are in the community and the resources that are offered in the school, we can help fill in those achievement gaps. So thank you for your initiative. And your
Thank you. Let me pick up this topic on achievement gaps here for just a second. We had massive learning loss, and our kids lost literally decades of progress, and it's not coming back fast. One of the challenges for it's not coming back is chronic absenteeism. School, we have to get kids in school. We know that sitting at home behind a computer, remote learning was not great, notwithstanding the fact that teachers work so hard. This is not a moment for us to judge teachers. They work so hard. But it is so much better to be with a teacher in the classroom, or with another adult, or at least someone, maybe an older sibling, or someone who can tutor and help fill in the gaps. Let me just ask a question for folks. What are things that hold you back from finding incremental support when you think your child or niece or nephew or grandchild needs help to bridge the gap. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Okay, can we go right here? Hi there. Nice to see you. Thank you for being with us.
I'm part of the Black Caucus, and it's finance. People can't afford it.
Yeah.
It's all about income. People can't afford it, and I work inside the schools, and the teachers are overwhelmed. But when they try to get kids to stay, they can't stay behind because they have other siblings they have to take care of. So a lot of it is finances, and they're not able to. A lot of kids want to stay, but they can't. They can't stay behind.
And stay behind, just to be clear, stay behind means spend extra time in school, even if the teacher's willing to do it.
Yeah, the teachers are willing to do it. But the kids, a lot of kids are taking care of their siblings or someone else in the household.
That's great.
And it costs like $30 an hour for a tutor.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to come right here. Can we come right up here? And I'm going to, then after you say something, and then I know Delegate Green has something to say, and then I'll come back and add something to this, just a little vignette here real quick.
Sir, so to that point, I completely agree. My kids one of mine is preschool age, but I think lack of affordability, I just want to commend you, Governor, for everything that you're doing on the school choice front. I've already started looking into options for my child should we choose not to send them to public school, and I know that there are options in Virginia. We have a tax credit scholarship program that a lot of people don't know exists that could help provide some of the support to our communities, particularly low-income communities, and we need to raise awareness and we need to build support for that program. So really want to commend you. I think, we have options in Chesapeake, and so we're blessed, but there are a lot of communities that don't have those choices or those scholarships available. And so I think competition is a good thing, and to the extent that we can, grow that program and grow choices for our families, I think that financial support will be helpful as well.
Great. Thank you. Delegate Green, you want to add something here?
Sure. So when I was in Richmond, I had a mother bring her fourth grader to see me, and it was an interesting story because she said that she was at a restaurant with her fourth grader and realized he was having trouble reading the menu. And she went home and asked him to read something else, and by the end of the day she realized her fourth grader virtually could not read. So she went to the school and said, he's passed every test, he's been promoted every year. No one told me my fourth grade son couldn't read, and there was no answer. So she brought him out of school, had him at home, and was looking at private schools. While she was researching private schools, she tried to help him learn to read at home. Within 2 months, working at home with his mom, he was reading at the fourth grade reading level. So this was not an issue with this child, it was the system. So what we have, and the governor's already explained it so well, so I won't go and reiterate that. But one thing I do want to say, I get to talk to a lot of parents and hear stories like that, but I also get to talk to a lot of teachers. And I've had so many teachers tell me they are trying to do their best for your students in spite of the system. And some teachers say, I've been teaching for 30 years and now we're so scripted. I can't do the things that I did 5 years ago because it's not part of the given curriculum. So we have struggles, but we're working on those, thank goodness. And the teachers, in fact, I've been so impressed with the teachers. I did a little research and found out that teachers spend on average $1,500 a piece out of pocket for expenses and things for their classrooms and supplies for their students. So last year I introduced, and this year managed to get it passed, a bill so that teachers can deduct up to $1,000 out of pocket for the expenses that they do at school. And it may seem like a small thing, but to me, just recognizing the teachers and what they do. And I didn't just include teachers, I included principals and student assistants, and I didn't just do public school, I also did private schools. And we actually got that passed. So we went through. So we want the teachers to know we appreciate everything that they're doing. learning loss, can I mention that bill that I did get passed? The learning loss bill?
Yes, please, and then we'll go get it passed next year.
Yes, sir. So, billions, literally billions of dollars were given to schools during COVID to try and help with the education and deal with kids who were working at home, however we needed to use that money. And we realized, the governor pointed out, that we had localities that still had billions of dollars in the bank that hadn't been spent. So working with the administration, I introduced a bill to require those school localities to either spend the money on the students that it was intended for who were struggling so hard, or give the money back to the state and let us give it to localities who have programs in place. We didn't get that one passed, but I think just drawing attention to the issue, we're seeing that money finally being used to help our students.
Yes. So let me just make a couple comments here real quick. So first of all, on the topic of time, what I'm hearing, and I know the Secretary and I have talked about this, is the need to create some flexibility in the school day itself in order to maybe have some targeted tutoring time in the day itself, and to let school systems work on that. And so that's what I'm hearing there about time, and because not everybody has the same time, and to have some flexibility in order to do that. I think second of all, the cost is real, and let's not ignore that. And I don't think that it would be inappropriate for me to suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you've been working on a bipartisan basis in order to support some resources to attack learning loss. We'll have more to say about that later. We don't want to, because there's still work being done. But it's being done on a bipartisan basis. And the partisanship that may have showed up in January or February, I think we've convinced each other we got to put this stuff down. We've got to go to work for the kids, because right now the kids are behind and we've got to catch up. And so both of those topics really resonate with me, and I think we'll be able to do something about both of them, time and affordability. And so thank you for that. And then transparency on student achievement. This is something I just want to make take a moment. So Secretary Godera believes nothing is more important. Well, maybe your family and your faith, but very little is more important than parents knowing what's going on in their children's lives, and that includes how they're doing in school. And so today, every parent can now get access to their child's academic profile and can understand how their child is doing. Now I'm going to go back to something I said at the beginning. Parents need to be engaged. Parents matter because parents have rights. But we also need to pull parents into this engagement so that they can have that moment of recognizing that their child needs some help too. And this is a partnership with parents at the head of the table, but with other people sitting around the table as well. Trusted teachers, a counselor, an administrator, a friend, sitting at the table with parents always at the head of it. So, okay, so let me just keep us moving. I saw some hands up, and I'm sorry to get everybody. We'll come. All right, so I want to transition to mental health if we can for a minute. And let me just set a quick table, do a little quick table setting here. Today, if we look back 5 years, the number of students who have had emergency room visits for suicide has doubled. We, in fact, hear particularly among young women that self-harm contemplation has literally gotten to an epidemic fashion. And then you couple that with the fact that, as I said, Virginia had in 2019 a bottom ranking on mental health support for our youth. Now we're going to couple that with the invasion of social media in every aspect of their life. Every aspect. And in fact, recent Pew research suggests that 75% of minors are fully engaged in social media, and 25% are engaged 24 hours a day. Now let me help you understand what that means. That means they're sleeping with it, their phone, or even worse, they're not sleeping. phone. Every aspect of their life is laid open. And oftentimes the influences on them are influences that parents don't know about. So I'd like to pick up this topic of mental health and behavioral health and social media. So here we go, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Gary Holland, retired business executive, former Army Ranger. I'm also the father of an 11-year-old. I was telling my seatmates that my wife and I were married for 20 years trying to have children. And 10 years ago, 11 years ago, we were blessed to have a little girl. Her name is Ruth. And we homeschooled her for the last 5 years. And the reason we did it was 2 reasons. You just hit on the issue of mental health. We were afraid that there were too many people out here not getting the help, the access to guns, as we saw in Jacksonville this week, that I don't know what I would do if my daughter, if something would have happened to her after waiting 20 years. I don't know, people who know Ruth, they know exactly what I'm talking about. My wife still thinks we should not have sent her to Great Neck Middle. I think Great Neck is a great middle school, but my wife is very concerned about someone doing something dangerous at that school. The second issue she fought me on was the whole issue of we've homeschooled our daughter. We've taught her the truth about our country. If you come to my daughter and mention the word slave, she will say no, they were enslaved. So I wonder what's going to happen at Great Neck Middle when my daughter pushes back on a curriculum that she knows is not true. And so I would like to know your thoughts on those 2 concerns. We put her in the school. It's a great school. We have a great school system in Virginia Beach. But the reason we homeschooled for so many years was because of those 2 concerns. And thank you again for this.
Thank you. Thank you for both those questions. So let me just make a few comments, and we're going to continue to listen to folks. So first of all, behavioral mental health is truly a crisis across all age categories in Virginia and around the nation. And so the sad reality is that if we don't get our arms around this behavioral health crisis, it does translate into self-harm and harming others. And that's why we're so aggressive in our efforts to transform the entire behavioral health system. And we could do an entire town hall on the challenges of transforming our behavioral health system. But let me give you a few key moments to it. One, it is our current behavioral health system is completely incapable of meeting the need. It's being totally overwhelmed. It's being totally overwhelmed, and in fact, it only focuses when someone is in deep crisis. And then it's a hospital setting and a law enforcement setting. And so we have to transform the entire customer journey of a Virginian who needs help. When they need help, they need to be able to get it the day they need it. And that is preventative care. That is pre-crisis help. That's dialing 988 and speaking to somebody and having someone answer the phone on time. That is having counselors and resources and a workforce that is so depleted. We need more. That's more capacity in crisis and not a hospital setting or a jail setting. And that's why we push so hard for mobile crisis units in every corner of Virginia, crisis receiving centers, so that we can decriminalize a behavioral health moment and run to it. And then finally, we have to give people a pathway back to a healthy life. And that means creating space for them where they have a place to go, where they can continue to get care on their way back. This is a huge transformation. It includes counseling in school with people. It includes remote counseling because of the shortage of people. So this is a giant issue for us. And we're never going to get in front of this unless we take a huge, bold step. I think second of all, safety in our schools is something that every parent here I know fears deeply. Fears deeply. And so that's why push for school resource officers in the school is so important. That's why the first budget that I was handed last year and that I signed had $45 million in funding for school resource officers on top of what was already there for across the Commonwealth, every school to get one. That's why you passed another bill to give them more resources. We went and found more money this past fall to put another $7 million for more school resource officers. It doesn't stop there. I would say, by the way, if you pick up your child today after school, thank the school resource officers. Thank them. They're part of that community. But we also have to make sure that we have equipped schools with active shooter training, which has happened all the way across the Commonwealth. We should digitize every single floor plan. And I have to say to my friends on school boards, make sure the schools do this, please. This is something that we facilitated in a bill last year, and not every school district has done it. Please take a note, Virginia Beach, please. Norfolk, please. Chesapeake, please. Digitize the school plans. We in fact have required every school to have a safety plan that they review with law enforcement to make sure that we have a way to react. And this by no means takes the evil out, but we're working. And then your comment on history standards is one that I so appreciate. And that's why we work so hard this year. I have felt so strongly that we need to teach all of our history, the good and the bad. We can't know where we're going unless we know where we're going. And our education team worked through what was a bumpy process, and I admit it. It wasn't smooth, and it had been smooth, we probably would have gotten it wrong. But what we did, I believe, is create the very best history standards in the nation. Why? Because we do teach today all of our history, the good and the bad. The root cause of the Civil War was slavery. We teach that in our schools. We also teach about our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, what it means to be a citizen. And finally, we recognize Virginia's heroes. Virginia's heroes that have presented themselves from the beginning of this nation, long before we became America, all the way up through the founding of our nation, all the way up through our civil rights movement. We have to teach all of our history. And we have the best history standards in the nation. Now, Secretary Gadara, thank you so much for your work there. So thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I went the wrong way. We'll come back. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, President. Governor Youngkin. This really means a lot to all of us in this room that both of you, took the time to do this. Parents matter. I'm here today to talk about the biggest elephant in the room. I'm not from Virginia Beach. But when I lived I'm a military spouse. When I lived in Japan, I heard even the admiral spouses praising Virginia Beach City Public Schools because many of them, their husbands were here. So of course, when we left the diplomatic community, we chose Virginia Beach because of your school system. Sadly, it wasn't what we thought. My son went 4 years at Pelham High School being bullied. I couldn't believe that was going on. So every day when he came to my husband and I begging to go to another school, I always had an excuse as to why he should stick it out, tough it out. Surely you've got to do this and this will work for you. He collapsed on Christmas Day. His best friend was at the house and I asked, "Is he really isolated at school?" He said, "Yes, Miss Reed." He said, "In fact, I believe that the only reason why they deal with me is because I'm not black." My husband and I felt like failures because we forced him to stay. What really hurt the most was that the school administrators know that this is going on with African American kids. Everybody deserves an education, despite their race, color, creed, sexual orientation. The gift that my son asked for he asked that he not attend his graduation. My husband said, give it to him. You don't have to go, son. You don't have to be with people who didn't find you worthy for 4 years. Parents matter. It's not the school's fault, Governor. It's not. It's our fault when we do not hold our children accountable for their behavior and how they treat other people. The teachers are being paid to teach, not raise our children. I love what you said, that they are being informed within 24 hours. Can we take it a step further and have them accountable for longer than that? Brought into the school system, and there's some sort of counseling. It may cost them time from work, but I guarantee you we might start seeing results if parents are being inconvenienced. Because children, the statistics are rising. And the LGBTQ plus kids, and that was not my son, but they're in the schools today, and regardless of what they want to be, they are still students. Let them learn.
Thank you. Can we just go over here, Sheriff Stoller, real quick? While microphone's coming, Sheriff. One of the reason why this bill came into being was because a mom and a dad lost a 12-year-old to suicide. And that child had been getting bullied at school, and nobody told them. And to see these parents stand up with emotion that maybe you can understand, but with emotion that drove them from their grief into action. And they came and personally lobbied in order to pass that bill that now does require full notification for both the perpetrator of bullying and the victim of bullying within 24 hours. Thank you. I'm sorry for the ordeal that your son dealt with. And I'm thankful that he has you and your husband as his parents.
Say to you that sometimes bullying becomes a crime, and it ought to be treated as a crime. And I think that, when I was a police officer, I would go around, and if the kids were out past the curfew, I'd pick them up and take them home, and ask the parent if they knew their kid was out. They said, yes, we do. I'd arrest the parent. So the kids were I think we got to hold them accountable. But Gary, if you talk about some of your concerns, I agree with you 100%. I think our ability to provide security is a failure, and I think it is national. I think that we have to, when I became sheriff 13 years ago, I recognized that there was a real heavy mental health problem at the jail. And so I went to the community service boards and tried to get them to get involved in it, so they didn't have the money to get involved in it. And I said, well, I've got about 10%, I've had about 30% of my inmates who are mentally ill, and they need some treatment. What do you do to treat them? I said, well, we don't treat them. We don't have the money to treat them. So I introduced a bill that required them to treat them, and the Democrats shut the bill down 3 or 4 times, and finally the CSB boards and the local health committees got the idea that I was going to win this eventually, sat down with the two women that are in charge of that and had a great meeting, and we took a program, and they came into the school, and it showed that mental health, when I had the first meeting with them, I said there was 30% mental health of my inmates. They said no, there was 10% mental health. They came into the school, there was 85% were mentally ill and had some sort of mental trauma. And so you can't rehabilitate a inmate that's mentally ill. You got to treat them, and you can't treat a inmate that's a criminal. You have to rehabilitate them, and I think that's critically important to recognize those things. And Governor, I appreciate you bringing this issue. But there's one other question I'd like to ask you. It has to do with education. And I think what is the problem with education is the Constitution, Virginia Constitution says that the education of our children will be the responsibility of the school boards. And I think that is what the Attorney General has ruled, that it's the Constitution, the right of the school board. They have the final say-so of what goes on here. And I think the governor...
In some things.
Some things, that's right.
Not everything.
Not everything, that's right. And I think that to get your curriculum there and get your plans there, I think you got to find a way to entice the school boards to adopt your plan. I think that's what you were talking about when you said it has to be adopted. And so how do you deal with the difference of the school board saying that we got the right to decide what goes on, and the governor's office trying to promote something that they may not agree with? And I think you're probably catching, in some areas of the state, they don't like this, and they think the school boards have the right to say what goes on. But I think that you're doing a damn good job, and I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of you. When I first met Youngkin, he came down to my office. We met for about 4 hours, and I said to him, then I'll support you for governor, but I don't want you running for president in 2 years. And so, those who wanted to be president in 2 years, he promised he wouldn't be president in 2 years. At my father's funeral, one of them I said, then I release you from that commitment. I want you to be president. And so, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff. Let me just cover one thing here, and then we'll go back to folks. So, the process, just to be really clear, on our model policies, these are unique model policies. There was a specific bill that was passed by the General Assembly in the previous General Assembly and signed by the previous governor that made it very clear that when it came to the model policies for transgender children, the governor is to write model policies, and the local school boards are to adopt policies consistent with the model policy. It's a very different approach in what the constitutionally historical approach has been between state government and local governments. And that's why the Attorney General did come out last week and said school boards have to adopt these, or at least policies consistent with those. I want to push us into this world of social media a little bit, if I can. And I'd love to hear from folks on your experience in talking about social media with your children, your sense of confidence in doing it. How did you get there? Because what I've heard all over the Commonwealth of Virginia is they know a lot more than me. And Delegate Green, I'm going to start with you because you have grandchildren even, but children and grandchildren. And how do you talk about social media as a family and how it should be used and how it shouldn't be used?
So it's an ongoing conversation. My daughter is the mother of my 2 grandchildren, and their use is restricted, but they understand why it's restricted. If there are issues that need to be discussed, my daughter and my son-in-law discuss those issues with their children rather than let them get their information from social media. But they're using social media, they're comfortable, but it's with the restrictions. You have to be approved. I was approved by my daughter to have messaging permission with my own grandchildren. So it's an ongoing issue. It's something that we do have to take care of. There are so many things on social media that most parents are not aware is taking place. And I just encourage you, talk to your kids, ask them to tell you what they do know. And I know one thing that the governor's trying to find out as he travels around the state is how people are dealing with this issue. There are tools there in place now for parents to use, but we're working very hard to strengthen that and make sure that there's not a way around to get to your children without going through the parents.
Anybody have any thoughts on social media? And over here. Okay, thank you.
I've been holding this for quite a while, so
there we go.
I've jumped around a little bit, but you know, I can definitely speak to social media. We come from the blessed of being married to my husband, who was the head of Department of Homeland Security for this area. So his background is much more in depth than the average parent. But we have had conversations with our kids for years about social media and the dangers of social media. And also with his background, knowing where much of the information is controlled and who's controlling that information. And part of that too is, you know, is it to divide our families and to break us apart? So just for the children to understand, we have all the safeguards on our kids. You talked earlier about the hours that kids are on their phone. There's actually, you can check and see how many times your kid picks up their phone. And when it gets to a certain number in the first app they look at, so obviously that's the trigger, that's what is driving their behavior. And when that becomes inside and you're spending all this time doing that and never going outside, research shows, going outside resets the brain. So when you have young kids having recess, sitting them outside, all that stuff stops as kids get older. And we take away all these other things that do actually make the kids better and stronger. You want them to perform academically, a lot of that too is a reset of the brain. Not shoving more information in more class time, just my opinion. The class stuff's important, but you've got to be able to do other stuff to get their brains rewired. But as far as social media, it's hard, and they are always one step ahead of all of us.
Yes.
So that's the biggest thing, and I do think, I mean, the kids, you pay for the, or at least we pay for our kids' phone. I think we have some rights to that, and to your point, parents matter. As long as I have the right and the control, I'm going to help them. And the kids, I'll tell you this, and the means, when they're first there and they're so, it's like a kid playing a video game. You ever have a kid play a video game longer than 20 minutes and you try to get them off and they lose their mind on you? It's because the brain is so hyperactive they can't stop. As soon as you get them away, they reset, they're back into reality. Same thing for social media. When you actually explain it and they understand the dangers, I do think they pay attention to that. So I hope that makes sense.
That's really great. Does anybody have any educational or programs that you've been to that work in getting you prepared to speak to your child about social media? That's where we are. Okay. One back here. Yes, ma'am. Coming this way.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we've had positive things and negative things on an education side using social media. I now have a college student who graduated from the Virginia Beach City Schools, and I had a senior this year in the Virginia Beach City Schools. Positive side, we've done both of my boys have done social media in younger ages all throughout school, prepping them for their college environment and prepping them for business, prepping them for longevity career-wise, because they made it so that they would have proper social media out there, so that they would be marketable, so that they would be ready out there for athletics, being out there marketable for their education. They also had positive out there knowing what should be posted out there and what shouldn't, because every scholarship they look out there, every employer goes out there and looks at you. So that they knew what was right and what was right. And similar to that gal, my husband also was in the field, but I can't divulge where and what. But so we kind of know in that realm. But thinking of an education side point where social media came into play, our school board, our school division as a whole played a huge part in opening this Pandora's box. If we did not go into the social media, and I used to be a professor in IT, and I used to be a teacher in the school system, we opened this door. We opened this box. We let it out. So, just to make it clear, we did not have the facilities, nor did they have the training on how to use it properly. We opened it and we didn't let it facilitate to know how to use it. So as that happened, we let it come too fast, too quickly, and they didn't know how to use it. I taught at the college level as well as the high school level as well as the elementary school level. So I was able to help my children embrace it, and we use social media everywhere. What does our school use? We use Twitter, we use Snapchat, we use everything in high school and middle school to communicate with all the students in the classroom. Nobody, you could be in the classroom, you might have 25 students in the classroom, they don't talk to each other. Why? And some of, even though we have the new rules of no phones in the classroom, but if it's allowed and they use it for educational purposes, you bet your sweet dippy that every 25 of them in the classroom is talking to each other on that phone, doing whatever they need to do, because it's related to the school project and they're using the software, or they're playing the game that they're putting on with the teacher in the classroom, but they're using the software, they're using the technology. That's the problem. We can use it, and we use it in college, but we use it on a different level. So their brain is going 24/7, and they don't stop. And then it doesn't stop at the door. And then they want to know who's going what, who's doing where, and it just doesn't stop. And it goes all the time. And like you said, they sleep with them. They go non-stop with the social media and the phones and the laptops. And it doesn't end. But thank you.
So let me ask a question in the group. How many of you would vote with the following statement? A yes. I wish my child or my grandchildren or my nieces or my nephews spent less time on social media. Yes. All right, here comes the second hard question. How many people agree that I, not the governor, but I, meaning you, have a role in helping them spend less time on social media? Friends, we've got work to do. And one of the things that I would love to raise for folks, kind of parents, teachers associations, for church groups, for neighborhood groups, for parents who are working together to raise children, is first tap into the many resources that Delegate Greenhall mentioned. Find a place to get up the curve on how to have this conversation with your child, your grandchild, your niece, your nephew. We've got to engage, and it is a real challenge. I have to say, one of the bills that I was very pleased to sign was a bill that said that if you are under 18, you can't get a subscription to a pornography site without your parents' approval. Guess what? The pornography site went out of business. This is where we have to engage with our kids. Okay, let me press one more topic here real quick. There were some military families here. Folks, what can we do better in order to support you as a military family mother in coming to our community? I'm asking a very direct question of my friend here.
Thank you, Governor, for first of all recognizing our military families here in Virginia. First of all, my name's Michelle Norman. I am a Navy spouse for over 27 years, and I have 2 children. One daughter with severe disabilities. And so today I'm going to share my story about special education, because I think that's an area that really needs to have some work here in Virginia. As you know, military families, we move quite often, every 2 to 3 years. And it's particularly difficult for those who have children with needs, because they have individualized education programs or they have 504 plans. They need to be implemented very quickly, because by the time, we find out through data that sometimes it takes up to 5 to 6 months for their services and supports to be in place. And if you think about that, it's about 20% of their time that they're actually in Virginia, and then they move on somewhere else. And so these kids are always behind. My story, we have spent about 18 years in Virginia, some of it in Fairfax, some here. But our last move here in 2014 was a struggle for my family. My daughter was going into 5th grade, and we had a very good IEP, but as soon as we finally got settled in the school district here, many of the supports and services were taken away. And I think there's one thing about Parents Matter is that you have to trust your gut. And I knew that something wasn't right. And even though she was receiving, you know, Dolphin of the Month awards and A's and B's, she was failing all the district tests and SOL testing. And so I was alone, my husband was deployed, and I really didn't have anybody else to ask for support. It's a school district that very many of my friends were like, it's great, everyone does wonderful there, so I did feel very alone. But I finally did find an advocate, and tried to work with the school to make sure she received a free appropriate public education. It had to be escalated to an attorney. By the way, there's no special education attorneys here in the Hampton Roads area because it's a very niche, complex law. So I had to go look in Northern Virginia. And this is, of course, my husband's, away. And we worked for a solid year with him. And another year of testing, I put my daughter into a private school that was meeting her needs. And after filing multiple state complaints, having to go to due process with the school district, we won each time. And it was a very big stress for my family. And it didn't stop there. The school district appealed to the federal district level. We won again. They stopped following the hearing officer's decision. And then they turned around 3 days after Christmas 2018 and sued my daughter. My husband was gone in Italy, and he had to come back for a week for the actual trial. And of course, we won again. So what military family has the time and effort to fight this kind of fight? We talk about VDOE, special education. There needs to be, we know there's been investigations regarding compliance and monitoring of this program, but it's so critical for military families to get what they need quickly here, get these kids settled, let them learn like every other child, and then move on if they need to move on. It was a fight that we fought that I know very few other military families could do. I appreciate that you care about our families, and I'm here to help with my experience and come up with ways that we can give extra support and protections for these families so they don't have to do the hard work that we had to do with my family. And I want to add one more thing. She did graduate just recently with both a private school diploma and a public school diploma because she passed all her SOLs during her time in the private school. And so we're really proud of her.
Thank you for sharing. Would you just grab some time with Secretary Guevara, please? We talk about this topic a lot. So thank you. And I know there's some folks in the Virginia Beach School Board here. Maybe you might want to connect it with that too, if you don't mind. So thank you. I'm cognizant of time. There's one topic that we didn't get to talk about, which is multiple pathways for students. And so I'm unfortunately going to violate one of my mother's edicts to me as I was growing up. My mother was an amazing woman. Just a quick thing about my mom. My dad lost his job when I was in 7th grade. My mom was a nurse. And for those, if anybody knows nurses or any of you are nurses, a nurse's heart is special. They have an overdose of empathy and an overdose of being direct. It's just a great combination. Anyway, that's when we moved to Virginia Beach. My mom said, I got this, and grabbed my dad by the ear and said, we're moving down to Virginia Beach. We're going to go get started again. So I have a really passionate belief that parents know their kids. They know what's good for them. And therefore, providing multiple pathways within school systems for parents to make decisions with their child is so important. One of those is the tax-driven scholarship comment that was made earlier, and so thank you for that. I think we in fact have these scholarships that are available through a tax-driven part of our budget and code, and I think we had record participation this year, which was fabulous. Families who otherwise might not be able to afford to make a choice to move to a private school environment, an alternative in the public school. I think second of all, we are seeing great innovation within the public school system. Part of that is our lab school initiative, which I'm incredibly excited about. And this is the ability for local schools in partnership with an institute of higher learning, either a community college or one of our four-year schools, to come together and design a new school. And we have one school that's already been approved as taking students this fall. We have 20-ish, 22 now I think, that have got planning grants that are being developed. My goal is to have 20 every year. So by the time we're done, we have 80 lab schools across the Commonwealth. And just to give you a sense, these are everything and anything. So in Southwest Virginia, they've come together again with Emory and Henry College to create a healthcare lab school. So everybody who goes to school there is going to do something in healthcare, whether that's to be a radiology tech, a nurse, or a doctor. We also are seeing a space lab school be put together near Wallops Island on the Eastern Shore. Kids who want to be in the world of space. They can be astronauts or they can be a space tech. We're seeing a marine trades school starting in Newport News for students who either want to design ships or ones that want to be particularly skilled in building them. All kinds of lab schools, really cool. That melds with a huge ambition that I have, which is to take our community college system and our K-12 system and kind of merge them a little bit, blur the lines, so that every student who is going to graduate from high school in Virginia has an opportunity, and I might suggest maybe even a requirement down the road, to graduate with a credential, an industry-recognized credential that they could go to work right away if they chose to, or they could go on to college if that's what they choose to do. But every child can choose the path that best fits their ambitions, and we can prepare them for this. So I'm excited about this opportunity to earn, it's called dual enrollment. Secretary Gadara calls it Diploma Plus. But for students to have a chance to get this credential or to earn college credit while they're in high school so that they can shorten the amount of time necessary to be in college. I still am just astounded by the fact that every student has been, and family has, I think, been misinformed to believe that if their child doesn't go directly to college and incur $80,000 in debt and get into their building, that's just not true. There are so many pathways and opportunities. Virginia is growing so fast now. It's exciting. We went from near bottom to near top in job growth over the last 18 months. We need a workforce. We need people to take these great jobs. And that's what's so exciting. Okay. Well, Delegate Greenhall, I'm going to let you take the first cut at wrapping up, and then I'll wrap us up.
Sure. So I just want to thank everyone for being here. I'm so pleased to be able to be part of the General Assembly and in the House of Delegates and get to work with Governor Youngkin and the administration, because while we're working to help the kids who are struggling, we're also working to help the kids who can be those high achievers. I'm one of those that didn't go to college. There was no money for college. I started a business in my garage, grew it for 20 years and sold it. 3 of my former employees have started their own businesses right here in Virginia Beach. So to be able to help children where they all learn differently. Families have different priorities and how they're going to make that work. We want to make as many choices available as we can and make sure that parents have the power to make those choices. And then, you know, it's being a parent is responsibility. If you'll remember way back, the very first thing I said was, I realized I was responsible for my children, and that included their education. So thank you everyone who came out, and thank you so much, Governor, for coming and having this conversation with us.
Thank you. We're sort of going to say thank you to you. Thank you. And let me just finish where we started. We are so appreciative of the fact that you stepped out of a very, very busy Monday. There's a lot going on today, I know. And thank you for dedicating time to have a conversation with us, to engage in an opportunity to learn from you. It's not a political moment, it's a parent moment. And I so embrace the view that this is both parents' rights and parents' responsibilities. This is an opportunity for us to step back and make sure that we're, yes, empowering parents, but we're also doing things to encourage parents and provide parents with resources so that they can be fully engaged, like having full transparency in how their children are doing in school. And then finally, as we head into the fall, into the legislative session, we'll be taking input from this group and from the other ones we've had around the Commonwealth to begin to frame a legislative agenda. And I know that my colleagues who are in the General Assembly or will be in the General Assembly are eagerly listening. Let me just then say finally thank you. Thank you for being parents that matter, grandparents, aunts and uncles, neighbors, because we need to make sure that we're listening to you. I'll echo the pastor's comment at the beginning. May God bless all of you. May He watch over us. May He watch over our kids. And most importantly, may He bind us together so that together we can provide the best opportunities through education and opportunity for all of our children in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.